have a form. I have to print it out. I have to sign it. I have to mail it. That's going to be the document. Maybe there's a link to the thing that I have to get done. Maybe there's a meeting or conversation and I have a calendar invite or I have some notes. I have other things that I want to attach to these things that I need to get done besides just the name of the thing itself. It's an email maybe that has to get done. So when I talk about task management, it's individual things that may or may not be related. Sometimes they have some sub things, and then they have accessories with them that relate to it. So the document or the link that they refer to. Let's move on to a project. So a project will have a task, a discrete thing that needs to get done. But these tasks can be usually broken up into phases. So if you have the sense of phase, like a beginning and a planning phase and an execution phase, and then a training phase, and there's tasks within each of those, now we're talking more about a project. And typically a project is going to be spread across multiple people working towards a common goal. That could also be true with tasks, but that's almost always true of a project. The box is getting a bit bigger because if you think about how you want your project to go, things come up that are not what you expected, and those would be called issues. Issues aren't always bad. They're just things that were not planned for. And an issue can occur in or without a task. So then we have our documents in our project. Not all the documents link to a task. Sometimes it's more of a deliverable. The task is to create this document. And so we want to have that in the envelope of our project. We have our links again, meetings and conversations in part of our project. Issues aligned to a task. So that's a little bit different, that a task itself turns into an issue because things aren't getting done right. And there's so much more that I could put in here for a project, but I think the size of the envelope around this is really the difference, and the fact that we are breaking work into phases that we want to roll our tasks up into. Some other things that we encounter might be risks. And again, we have like the status of everything. And that's going to be more of a snapshot, not just of our tasks, but where we are in a phase. Has a certain meeting been held? How many issues do we currently have, and what are their priorities, and so on. So we're going to be looking at mostly task management, but I'm going to be referring to how that task management could evolve with Microsoft into more project management. And there are many organizations, if not most, that have a mix. You have tasks that need to get managed, and you have projects that need to get managed. And the more that we can put those in the same place, then it just becomes easier for everyone. So if you were to just kind of go out there and search for what does Microsoft have for project management, you're not really going to find much. So they're going to just give you some links to stuff. I think their answer is like, you kind of have to do this yourself. We're going to provide you with a lot of tools and applications that you can customize to meet your needs, because there is no such thing as one size fits all project management. And by bringing these things together, good luck. Hopefully you find something that works. So there's nothing that's like a Monday.com for Microsoft. It doesn't exist. It's spread across a few different apps, which is hopefully one thing we can take out of this webinar are some of those more easily accessible tools, what they do out of the box, and ways that you can quickly extend them to be able to get more to that DIY aspect of the elusive Microsoft PMO. So what is in that toolkit that we get from Microsoft? These are just kind of in the order that I'll be showing them, but the first would be Microsoft Planner, the /Teams. Next, we have SharePoint. And then we have M365 add-ons. So those could be things like Power Platform, Project for the Web, other things that you could purchase. And I'll touch on that one briefly, but we'll mostly be focusing on the first two today. We are going to go through this very quickly. There's a lot of deep dives. I mean, I could do a 8-hour presentation just on Microsoft Planner alone. So we're going to do a flyby of these apps, make sure that we touch on the things that are really important to understand about the pros and cons of these different tools. but focusing on how to amend for a specific scenario, we may want to address that separately. So buckle up. It's gonna be quick, but informative, and at least give you a place that you can understand where you can go to start accessing these tools with your Microsoft account. All right, let's start with Microsoft Planner. And Microsoft Planner, I would call the to-do manager. It's more of that task management application, and it's the most inflexible, I think, as you'll see coming up here. I'll switch over to my browser. Nancy, can you see the browser? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So if you go to office.com or Microsoft365.com, they'll both take you to the same place. If you have not been to this site before, I highly recommend it. Most people aren't aware of it. It allows you to go anywhere within your Microsoft cloud experience, to your OneDrive, to Teams, to Outlook, and have everything kind of roll up in this hub. I find it extremely useful as a way to get to where it is that I need to go to access my documents. I almost always start at office.com or Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to show you first within office.com, and we'll look at Teams a little bit later. Just pausing. Okay, doesn't seem like there's any questions. So to access Microsoft Planner, you can come up here to this waffle icon, and you'll have a list of apps. You may or may not see Planner here. So I do not. We're going to just type it in. And there is Planner. So now you'll be in the Planner experience. If you have any plans, they will show up. And we're going to take a look at this new client onboarding plan. So if you're familiar with like a Kanban board at all, this will look familiar to you. So what Planner allows us to do is take tasks, discrete things that need to get done, and put them into buckets of what are defining. So this initiating, planning, executing that you see across the top, completely customizable. You can call these whatever you want. You can have as few or as many of them as you wish. And we can take individual tasks and move them between the buckets. So in this case, it is running very much like a Kanban board, where a task will move from the left to the right as it has its work completed. There are ways that we may want to set this up into tasks that are based on a certain category of work, or based on a certain criticality of the work, however it is that we need to do it. Totally up to you. It's your planner board. A few things that we have when we have a new task. So let's add one in. We'll say add a task, and the only thing we really need to put in is the name of the task. We already have developed project plan, so let's say project sponsor Google, and I could leave it just like that. If I open this up, now I have a like a form that comes up where I have more information about this task. So I can assign the task. I can add a label. And so the nice thing about these labels is you can customize them. So you can see that a lot of them here are just the name of the color that the label is, like light blue. If I decide I want to rename this, I could say, oh, there we go. Light blue, we'll change this to, oh, it's not letting me type in there. Let's try one more time. Outside counsel. So this means that I need to have somebody else take a look at this. So I can apply that label, and I can put multiple labels in here, as many as I wish. Determine which bucket it goes into, or drag or drop. set the progress. So the progress is either not started, in progress, or complete. This cannot be customized. Those are the three that you are limited to. Same thing with priority. You are given these priorities of urgent, important, medium, and low, and those are the ones that you have to use. There are no other options. Start date, the due date. Let's go ahead and put yesterday's date. And if the task repeats, this is a fairly new feature that you can add in for status meetings, that sort of thing. And then we can have in a checklist. So we can say complete the project charter. Submit as agenda item for executive meeting. And I can choose whether I want to show these up on the card or not. So I'm going to take these off, but be aware of what I can't do here. I cannot set an assign to for each one of these. I cannot set a due date for each one of these. I can only do that at this top level. So this is truly a checklist and no more. So if I wanted to have the complete the project charter as a task for someone else to do who wasn't me, then I can select this button, which says make this a new task. So I can promote a checklist item to a task if I have to have a separate due date for an assignee for it. I'm not able to do that within the checklist. So just be aware of that, so that if you think back to what I said about project management versus task management, we can't really do project management within Planner because of this. We don't have any way of aggregating tasks under an umbrella. We have these checklists and we have these parent tasks. Comments, and the nice thing here about the comments is that they get appended. Let's see, put that to add this to our task plan. Right, and now I can have kind of a running history of what has happened with this task or anything that has been entered in. So if you're working on something back and forth, if let's say I did complete the project charter and now that's done, and I need to now reassign this to somebody else, then that person could come in and add in their own comments, and we have an audit log of what has happened with this task. But that has to be part of your standard operating procedure of working with this list.
We have a question really quick. Is there a field about date discussed for a task and a plan?
This is what you get. You cannot add any fields to this. If you want to capture another piece of information, you cannot do that. You can add it to the notes, but that would have to be on you to decide how this is going to be handled. So this is very rigid. You have these labels that you can change, but even the labels themselves, like the amount that you have, you can't change them. You can't change the priority, the progress, or the fields. So if you don't see it on this form, you wouldn't be able to do it.
What about if you do @mention in the comments, would that person be notified?
Yeah, so when you are, oh, my colleague isn't showing up here. Let me reopen and let me refresh this. So I'll come back to that here. When you assign somebody a task in Planner, they do get a notification in their email and Microsoft Teams that says something has been assigned to them. You can also send a link to an individual task. I like this feature. So if you wanted to call out, if somebody had one task in one project and maybe they weren't very familiar with Planner, you could send them a link to an individual task. They don't have to come in and try to find it. So we're going to save this. You can see there's no save button. If you've worked quite a bit in M365, that shouldn't be a surprise, but that is something that I get questions about a lot. Save buttons have largely gone away on the web. There's just instant saving. So let's close that. I'm going to do a quick refresh here. See if we can get somebody else to pop up. And no, there she is. There's Amelia. And now I know I just added her into that task, but now we're both assigned to this task. And maybe it's not this one. Yeah. I have to say, there are some of these that do allow for the at mentions and some that don't, and it's very inconsistent. So I guess this is not one of them here within Planner. I apologize. I thought it was. You may want to try that on your own. It could just be what I've got working with over here. Some of the things that you can do with Planner. So we have different views. So right now we're seeing this in the board view, Kanban board view. There's a grid view, so you can just look at everything in a big list and then sort them as you want to by bucket, by progress. You can look at some charts, see where things are in your different buckets. If you needed some reports, you cannot customize these. So if you wanted to create a different type of report, how many reports, how many do I have in a particular label, for example, you're not going to be able to create that here. And you can see these tasks on a calendar based on their due date. This one's showing up in red because it's late. So that's a nice part of this too. Here you can see it's showing up as red. This is showing up as due because it is due today. And just to show you, we can put this one for next Thursday. And now we can see the date here. So it's doing the date relative to the current day. So this one's due, this one's overdue, this one is late, and then I can filter based on when things are coming up or by label. But this is what you see is what you get here. You can create as many buckets as you want, as many tasks. You can rename the labels. Beyond that, you're a bit stuck. Another thing that it's kind of a criticism of mine of this, just more to be aware of, is this check mark is nice. So if I get the sponsor's approval, I check it, I get a nice ding, and it goes down to completed tasks. What I cannot do from here is mark something as in progress. So again, thinking this is very task-based, just stuff that needs to get done. It's kind of done or it's not done. If I need to mark something as in progress, I have to open it up and now put it back to in progress. Not such a big deal, but the fact that they make this nice interface where you can come in and kind of set the status makes it feel much more like a checklist than a true project management, task management tool than a project management tool. Other features of Planner is I can come here to assign to me, and now I can see across where each one of these is a planner board, new client onboarding, reporting tasks. I have the same thing here. I can see all the tasks that are assigned just to me across these two projects, or planner boards, sorry, and the columns that those belong to. So the view here is a little bit different. I can also see this on a schedule for myself, which is pretty nice, including recurring tasks. If I come back to the hub,
Right, before
Mhm.
you get into the hub, we do have a couple questions back to that planner. Are you able to duplicate plans or save the plans as a template?
I was just going to show that now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when you're in the hub, let's say I have this new client onboarding and I had this as part of a larger project. You might have a planner within a project. I could come in here and say copy plan. And I've done this for a number of clients where we would, if their projects are very templatized, we can take a template plan, don't touch it, right? We don't assign anybody anything. We don't add any dates in. And then we can say a copy plan. We can decide what it is that we want to copy and then give it a name and then copy it. So there's not really like a template. You would just create the plan and then create copies of that. You would call it template new client onboarding, for example.
We do have a few other questions. This is a
Okay.
good time. One of the questions, if I assign a task to a colleague, will he or she be able to see the entire project?
Yes, you are a member of the plan or you're not. So anybody who has access to the plan can see all of the tasks. And there's no way around that with Planner. because it's based on membership with a group. It's not access.
Okay. For the charts, are there other widgets for other types of charts available?
You would have to build it yourself. So the data that you can get from Planner, I'll come back to that. I want to move on to something else. But with this charts, you cannot add this, but you can extract the data with it. You can extract most of the data, not everything, but you can get most of the data that is in a task and export that to something else and then do more reporting there. And then you could automate that using Power Automate. So that's going to be helpful if you wanted to do more of that PMO solution and look across, because the other thing that may not be obvious, but it would be if you started using this, is let's say I'm looking across multiple new client onboarding. I have no visibility into how each one is doing without going into it. So I have new client onboarding 1, new client onboarding 2. I could come into the charts and just take a quick look at where I am, but I don't get an aggregate view across like a program or across multiple projects. There's just no way to do that. Each project is on its own. So the hub, where it seems like you might be able to do something like that, is really just a table of contents, if you were, for all of the plans that I have access to. So let me go back to the deck. So if you need to manage tasks, Microsoft Planner, it will probably work. You can put all of the things that you need to do or all the things your team needs to do in Planner. They can see the work that they need to do across Planner, and they can look at it in the To-Do app. They can look at ways that these projects, these tasks are categorized based on your labels, based on your fields. And you can create copies of an existing planner. So next time you have a similar project or list of tasks, you can copy it. But you cannot have phases in the sense that you can roll up information about an overall status. You can't really capture anything that's not on the form. So you need something more than description, like additional dates or who reviewed something. Like you're not going to be able to do that with Planner, which means you can't report on that information if you were to extract it. And you can't get any sense of status across different Planner boards. So Microsoft Planner does not work for project management. Task management, yes. Project management, not so much.
Are you able to attach documents to a task?
Yes, you can. And even better than that, you can link to a document. I would always recommend that, because if you attach it, it's in that task. So it would be better if it was in a OneDrive, or better yet, if it's in SharePoint or Teams, and then you can link it from there. And in fact, if you go to attach the document, the first option it'll say is to add it as a link. So it kind of promotes that good data hygiene. But you can attach it too, especially if you need a screenshot of something. You can absolutely attach it in multiple attachments.
Do you link the task to your personal Outlook calendar?
Let's come back to that. All right, now let's look at Microsoft Lists. This is also SharePoint. So actually, Antin, can you pull up the poll with the project management? I don't know if you have. Okay, no? Okay.
But feel free to use the chat.
Yeah, if you have used SharePoint before for project management, if you could, I don't know, if like raise your hand or just let us know in the chat so I can have an assessment of how much to cover here. Okay, let's go back to the demo. So once again, I'll come back to Planner. Planner, my Office homepage. And I'm going to go to my waffle, and I have lists. If you don't see lists, don't freak out. You have it. Just type it over here and it will show up. The more you use something, then this list gets smart and it will add it to your list of apps over here. So I'm going to go into lists, and I've got some lists that I've already been working on over here. Let's take a look at the Seattle Symposium. So if you've used SharePoint before, this is going to look really familiar to you. I should say specifically List in SharePoint, because this is List in SharePoint. What Microsoft has done is taken lists, the feature within SharePoint, and allowed you to create them outside of a SharePoint site. But in my experience, nobody actually does that. They're always part of a SharePoint site, but you can access them separately and in these groups. So this covers a lot of the gaps, I suppose, between the task management of Planner, but with the ability to add more custom fields. So if I look at something here about being able to capture sessions, add new item, all of the fields that I have here are here because I put them here, not because Microsoft told me that these are the fields that I have to have if I'm trying to capture information about an upcoming symposium. So if I have a session, I can type in the details I want. So here I have a drop-down list of session types. These I have different colors for, and I can kind of pick whichever one I want. This is going to be a single select. This list is up to me. Description, speaker, start and end dates, and so on, attachments, notes. And I can add in as many sessions as I want here. But what this is not is a to-do list. So anything that I put in this list, if I say I'm delivering this welcome session, it does not appear as a to-do for me. It is something that is assigned to me on this list, but I could be listed in many other ways too on this list. It's not really capturing things as to do, but it's a way to keep organized. So I could come in different ways of looking at this information, group by session type. I know I have only one in here right now. If I wanted to, let's go and look at another list. Let's look at this client onboarding. Actually, let's look at this one. So this might be something that many of you are having to manage, where you want social media posts or blog posts, and you're trying to make sure that you're staying on top of your presence, and you want to be able to schedule out a number of things. So here we have a reminder for this webinar that we're all in right now. The second of 3 posts coming up for the July webinar, who's going to write it, the current status. But I realized, I don't actually have the site this is going to go on. We want this to be on LinkedIn. So I'm going to add a new column, and we can go ahead and make this a choice. And this would be, just going to call it where. And let's say we have LinkedIn, X, and we want to make that purple. We can say Facebook, and that's going to be like Facebook blue. And I'll leave it with those. Say we'll do Instagram. And I'll make that like pink. Okay. And we're going to add this one here that says can add values manually. So if somebody needed to add something to TikTok, and they come in here and say, I don't have this up. Okay, this one's going to go on LinkedIn, but I go, oh, I need to also put this on TikTok, and I don't have that. Then I could type it in, and now I have a new value in there. So we can customize this too, so that people can add in their own values, or also set forth what those values are going to be. So we're going to do LinkedIn for this one. But again, this is, okay. This one is here where I am the author, but this is not the same as a to do. But this one, which we're looking at just to kind of show you how these things can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. I can come in and put a comment, and I could do an at mention here to Amelia on this one and say, can you please review the draft? And then she would get a notification in an email, I think also in Microsoft Teams, that I've added something to her. So we have a conversation going on about this the same way we do within the comments of the planner. So that part is consistent, but how it's being done is not always consistent, as that's now a panel over here on the side. Once again, I can copy the link to this. So if I wanted to send it, if Amelia's like, oh, I didn't get it, or she's still out on her 4th of July break, I can send her a link later directly to this item without her having to fish through it, because there isn't really a roll up of all of the things that she may be assigned that's separate, because this is not a to-do list. Were there any questions that came in about lists?
For lists, who has view into the various lists?
You can come over here to manage access. And this would share all of the groups that have access to this within a, that you share it with. And the same thing with Planner, for the most part, by default, I should say by default, if you have access to the list, you have access to the list. Everything in the list, you have access to. Obviously, if you link to a document somewhere else that is not attached, then they may not have access. But if it's in the list, everybody has access to it. Okay. Going back to the deck. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. So let me show you another thing about lists when I talk about SharePoint. So lists really is SharePoint. This view of lists, I don't use, and I don't particularly recommend it, because it's not really giving you any roll up. So unless you have a lot of lists where you're managing the same thing over and over, like you were looking across multiple symposiums or something, you may not really want to use this view. What would be better is to go into SharePoint. So if I go back into this Seattle Symposium, you can see here it says new client onboarding underneath. New client onboarding appears for the Seattle Symposium project tracker list and the issue tracker list. That refers to the SharePoint site that these lists belong to. So in another window, I have the new client onboarding SharePoint site. So I've used the project management template SharePoint site. I didn't build this myself. This just comes when I set up the new project site, set up a new SharePoint site. I said I want a project management style site, and it created this project progress tracker list and issue tracker list for me. I did not have to do that. But then I created, by coming here to new and list, you can see there are some templates that you can choose from, or you can build your own, or have a copy of one, upload in Excel. So lots of ways that you could get started with these lists. I created a employee onboarding list, and now that is, sorry, that wasn't the employee onboarding. This was the conference management list, and it added this in. So now I'm able to see that list, but I'm in my SharePoint site. So with my SharePoint site, I have a OneNote notebook that anybody can use to capture meeting notes, which is especially helpful if you're using Microsoft Teams. I have a calendar. I have my lists, other lists that are here. I have a place for all of my documents. I have the list that I created. And I think one of the best parts is I have this homepage that I can customize, so I can add in whatever I want. So now I have more of a feeling of a project management site. If I have a list for issues, I have a list for tasks, I have a list of risks, I have my deliverables in one place, I have conversations in one place. Everything is together here in the SharePoint site. So now if I'm working on a project with many other people, I have a real place to come in and collaborate. So now I'll go back to the PowerPoint. So you can have a homepage that you can customize, that you can put whatever you want as a overview of your project. You can create all types of lists, as I said, about issues, risks, status reporting, templates, whatever it is that you want to manage within your project. All those different artifacts can go in one place. You're not able to do that with Planner. You can use views. So if you wanted to say, show everything assigned to me, show everything that's overdue, show everything that is coming up in the next 2 weeks, show me everything where we're posting on LinkedIn or Twitter, then you could create whatever views you want. And then you could have personal views and you can have global views. And all of that is very easily customizable within the SharePoint list. You can add whatever columns you want, whatever it is that you want to track. Much easier to report and much more configurable. The one thing that you can't do with a SharePoint site, though, without a lot of grief, is creating a template of a SharePoint site with all of the content. So you've gone through all of this work, you've created all of your lists, you've created all of your views, you got some standard risks in there. Let's say you've got your standard projects, tasks, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to create a template. You're not able to do that anymore. You used to be able to do that in 2003. You used to be able to do that in 2007, 2010, 2013. All the versions of SharePoint, except the latest one, can't do that anymore without building something because they've changed the underlying architecture. So it can be done. I have done it, but it's not something that you would be able to do without using something like Power Automate. So you can template individual lists, but the entire site, like the look and feel of the site, you're not able to do. Or there's also tools that you can purchase that will handle that for you, but nothing out of the box. Again, there's no roll up and there's no like tasks. So if you have issues and you are in 3 different projects, there's nowhere where you can say like, show me all the issues across all my SharePoint projects, because it is not treating like a task list that way like it does in Microsoft Planner. And there's also no roll up from a management perspective of how things are going in individual projects, because you could use a SharePoint site for anything. It doesn't need to be project management, even if you've used the project management template. So you have to build this yourself if it's something that you want to do, because all of the data on these sites can be exported and you can do something with it, but it doesn't just happen that way. You also don't have chat. So we didn't talk about this with Planner, but I feel like that's something that's missing in the SharePoint site. So if you wanted to be able to just talk about the project or capture conversations, that's one thing that's really absent from the SharePoint side of things. And yeah, as I mentioned, you can't view across projects here. And there's no way to even view within a project, really. That would all have to be manual. So we'll talk about how to do like true project management in Microsoft 365. But there was one more thing I'd like to show you over here. And we have a few minutes. So there is this Teams icon next to my project site. If I click that, it's going to open Microsoft Teams. Are you seeing Microsoft Teams? Okay, great.
Yes.
And you'll see here, I'd really like to know too if you're using Microsoft Teams, and especially if you're using it for anything besides meetings, because it's just awesome what you can do with Teams. It's really great for collaboration, and it's going to bring everything together, mostly that we just talked about. So I want to take a moment and show this to you. So I've got posts, I have files, and these files are actually the files from my SharePoint site. So you can see here it says open in SharePoint. This client onboarding is like a different view of what's happening in my SharePoint site. So a team is a window into a SharePoint site. Behind every team is a SharePoint site. If you didn't know that, so if you needed to be able to do things in SharePoint and in Teams, it's actually all the same. I have notes, and that's going to point to that notebook, that OneNote that's going to be configured in every team, every SharePoint site. There's the project tracker. So that's the same list that I have on my SharePoint site. And if I even come here to our site, now it's going to show me in a moment. this should look really familiar. We just saw this. It's the homepage of our SharePoint site that I had in the team. So now I'm able to see this. So without having to go back and look at what's going on the SharePoint site or with team, I can interact with everything here. And it's not just a view. I mean, I can click around in here and use it like SharePoint embedded within Teams. And because I created that symposium list, I could say add a tab, and we're going to add a list. Add an existing list, and here's that list that I had created. So these are the 3 that are part of that site. And now I can add that Seattle Symposium up here at the top. And wait, there's more that's going on. I can also add in planner. So then I can use a combination of lists and planner within a SharePoint site or within a M365 group. So here's that new client onboarding that I had created that is actually part of this site as well. And now I can access Planner not just through the web, but I can have all of these features, my documents, my notes, my lists, my planner boards, all within my team. And there's a little bit more too. So now I'm looking at this within one planner board within one team. But on the side of Teams, if I come down to apps, the ... here, I should have planner that I can add in on this side here, and I can right click on it and say pin, and I'll keep that here. And now this is a personal view. This is an area where I spend a lot of time. So now I can see everything that I have to do. Again, this doesn't include things that are in your SharePoint list, but everything that I have to do across all of my personal tasks, my planner tasks, and even my emails. So I have some tasks that I've assigned to myself in Microsoft To Do. These aren't related to any SharePoint site or project or anything. These are just from my own To Do app, or I can track them here. Here are things that have been assigned to me. Here I can see what plan they're coming from. So here's reporting task plan, new client onboarding plan. And even emails that I have flagged in Outlook will show up here with any due date that I have given them. So this is a great place to tell people to be able to come in and see without having to go in. Do I have anything assigned in this project? Do I have anything assigned to that project? What's going on in my to-do today? And then I can organize everything in my my day within my own plans. So you can do this within Microsoft To Do. If you have the desktop app, you can do it within Teams, which I think is really great. But definitely having the planner tab, I think, should be the default for everybody in Teams. Really helpful to help bring things together. And I just want to touch on more formal project management in M365, just to let you know that it exists. It is definitely more. So a few things that you can do, if you do look up project management from Microsoft, you're going to get some ads for competitors, and if you scroll past those, you'll get to this page, which says project management, seed plans, and pricing. This is not what I just showed you. This is going to be more like a project server, if that's something that anybody has familiarity with, but a much more modern version of it. It does allow you to do task aggregation, timeline view. So it's essentially project online, sorry, Microsoft Project, like the application, but online. That's what I meant to say. It's like Microsoft Project online. So you can do much more robust scheduling. You can do dependencies. You can do effort management. You can do budget management. You can do resource allocation with it. You can look across multiple projects, depending on your level of access, and you can control access more at a task level. So all of those more enhanced features you can get with this Microsoft Project for the web. And it might be too much, like there's nothing in between. You either are going like really big with this, or you are going to go with the tools that I showed you. But there is another way, which is to do, I'm just going to leave this up here for a moment, to kind of build your own. And this is where I've worked with a lot of companies to help orchestrate a custom solution where we are doing some of the reporting. So we're able to take extracts from existing projects, whether they're in SharePoint or Planner, and then roll them up into some type of dashboard using Power Automate that they can look at and find to be accurate. And it's always going to be just in time. So if you're not familiar with Power Automate, it's the workflow engine of M365. You can use it to pull data from just about anywhere, whether it's Outlook or Teams, or even outside of M365 if you wanted to get information from social media or from websites, Workday, your CRM, you know, whatever it is that you're using. And you can even build your own. If you have something that is not that common, you can connect to it most likely as well. And we can bring data from multiple places and create reports or any kind of automation that you would be interested in. So typically I would see with a project site, you have your SharePoint site with some SharePoint lists. You might have a planner board or two for specific things, and then you're using Power Automate to create some type of process management around what you've built. And I'll leave it there. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take those. I can walk through some more examples too. I know, like I said, this was really fast. There's so much to cover on these topics, but I just wanted to give you a view between Planner versus SharePoint lists versus the SharePoint site, and then how you can bring it all together in Teams. Really powerful and definitely a great place to start and get familiar with it if you're not using Teams for anything but meetings. So thanks for sticking around with me today. Yeah.
Britt, that was great. It was really a lot of information, but I think you did a great job just showing us how powerful it can be and how ways that we can use it. We do have a few minutes. I do want to touch on some of the questions if we could. One of the questions is around, can anyone become a member of the plan both within or outside the company? And if so, does someone outside the company have to have a Microsoft subscription?
Yeah, I should have touched on that. So thank you very much for whoever asked that question. People who are outside the organization can interact with as long as it's on the cloud. They can interact with anything in M365 that you give them access to. So you can add them to a team. You can even give them ownership of a team. They can be part of a planner board, although that can be a little bit more limited. So they may not be able to access everything if they do not have a Microsoft account of their own. So if they are coming in with like a Gmail account and it's assigned a Microsoft license, they won't be able to do all the things that you would be able to do with that license, but you can give them access to be able to view and interact with certain tasks, or be able to come into your SharePoint site and interact with data there, upload documents, that sort of thing. But I think they may not be able to use Planner if they don't have a license.
Another question is around if a task or request has been sent to you, will you get or able to set a reminder if you have not attended to the request?
If the task is in Planner and it has a due date, you will be reminded automatically from Planner. You'll get a summary that says, hey, you have 7 tasks that are due. And then I believe you can opt out of those, but you will get reminders from Planner without whoever is organizing it setting that up. If you wanted to do something similar with Microsoft lists, when you first set up a list, I'm not sure if I would be able to show you right now, but if you go to lists and you set up a list, it will ask you to set up a reminder workflow every 3 days, and you can just say yes to that and it will build the workflow for you. So you don't really have to know anything about how to do it. So you can configure all of that, but it's not out of the box like it is with Planner.
Thank you. All right, well, we are at time. Thank you, Britt, so much. For everyone else, I did drop the survey in the chat. If you would like more webinars on Microsoft tools, please fill out that survey, drop it in I think there's a section at the end of other items that you want us to cover. If there's specific Microsoft 365 tools, I know OneNote came up a second ago, so feel free to drop those in and we'll do our best to address those. That is it for today. Apologies if we weren't able to get to your questions, but you have my email address or you'll receive an email from me. So if you do have any questions or if you would like to access some one-on-one coaching, please let me know and I will make sure that that gets addressed. That's it for today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Britt, and see you all next time.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. Bye-bye.